I'm John Self, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. We're delighted to have you with us today. We have a great program lined up. We're going to talk about interviewing and the 7-day steps that you can take to do a better job in the job interview. So let's get right to it. Planning for a critical face-to-face interview is absolutely essential. You can no longer just show up and answer questions. Why? Because the number of executive and management positions have contracted considerably beginning before pandemic and extending through today. Let's see. Try again. Well, okay. And so what we want to really highlight today is that you've got to be prepared. And you can't just prepare 7 days in advance. You really have to understand your value. You have to really understand what you bring to the table. You have to have that down pat. You have to be able to absolutely have a resume that is customized, that speaks to the needs of the job. If you're applying online, because it's going to be evaluated by a recruiter, some reporting notwithstanding. Only about 2 to 3 out of every 10 resumes submitted are ever seen by a recruiter. Which resumes are those? They're the resumes that really stood out in the applicant's scanning process and had a high scan score. And you do that by having the right qualifications, having at least 80 to 85% qualification match on criteria, and then use the keywords and phrases. So you've got to do that. It takes a long time. And if you're applying online, there's some programs that companies use, and Workday is one of them, that most applicants would just as soon torpedo than to have to deal with it. It's part of the really dysfunctional element of job search now, especially with online. It's even affecting management and executive roles, so you just have to learn to deal with it. We'll be talking more about that. Matter of fact, check out our newsletter tomorrow morning on Guiding Your Career. It's on Substack. It's a subscription newsletter, but we're going to try to add enough value. If you're a member of our career group, Guiding Your Career community, it's $49 a month, and that includes the subscription. Okay. So let's reinforce as we begin today some really important elements. Number one, you can't just take 7 days and go, okay, I got this 7-day plan from John and I'm ready to go. No, you have to really understand your value. You have to be prepared and you have to rehearse. And we're just talking about some steps to get ready for a specific interview. Thank you for joining us. And this is a program that comes every second, is it second Tuesday and third Tuesday, or the first Tuesday and second Tuesday of every month? I have to look at the calendar. We have so many stream programs. I apologize. But anyway, we try to do this program at lunch. It's available for replay on YouTube after we finish today. So check it out. Okay, planning for your critical face-to-face interview. Now, this is a 7-day work plan to help ace the questions and build trust. Now, to get started, first of all, you've got to really, really get yourself focused. You have to be very intentional, you have to be very consistent, and you have to be willing to be accountable. Not just in the interview, but with yourself in preparing for the interview. If you aren't in this mindset, you're in trouble. Why? Again, because there are more people looking for jobs than there are jobs. I mean, the disparity is significant. So if you just show up and think you can just give it a lick and a promise, you're probably not going to get hired. And why would you want to waste your time? So it's really important for you to do a better job in getting prepared. And when you do get the job for the interview, or do get an opportunity to interview, you go in with these 4 elements that you're zeroed in on, and you can be more successful. So first, understand your value. As I said at the outset, you've got to create a value brand statement, focus and purpose. I can always tell when I interview someone, and I did that over 9,000 times in my long career in healthcare, and both in management services and as a 27-year executive recruiter, and as a crime writer and investigative reporter for a major Texas newspaper. I've interviewed people all shapes, forms, and fashions, people who wanted to talk to me, people who didn't want to talk to me, people who were happy to share, people who were trying to conceal. I can always tell people when in the recruiting side, when we're looking for people to hire, I could always tell the people who understood their value. Why? Because they were more focused. When I said, tell me why we should hire you, they would immediately hit all the key points that we were looking for. If they started talking about their resume and trying to do a rambling walkthrough of their career, We cut them off. We already got the resume. We don't need that. Tell us why you're worth hiring. Then you need to create a professional network to support your value brand statement. And you need to use networking 3.0 strategies. If you're not familiar with that, we don't have a lot of time to talk about that today, but basically it's tied to a written career plan. And part of your written career plan means you have a written plan, a communications plan that really establishes what you're going to say, not only in a job interview, but things that you post online on LinkedIn, because now you have high-speed scanners, and that's the way a lot of people are being recruited automatically by algorithm. So, you need to have connections, and if you do, that's better. But if you're just applying online, or you're not applying at all, you're going to be, if you're not visible on LinkedIn, you're in trouble. Okay. So one of the things you also want to tell you about is a core and categorical worksheet. You can download that for free at johngself.com. Just hit the little red tab over on the right-hand side. It talks about the boot camp. They're updating that later today, but that's a tab that'll take you to the download page, and you can get the core and categorical form. And I'll talk to you about that in just a minute, but it'll help you identify your stories, examples of your success, and of your strengths. Okay. Now, without those 4 foundational elements that I talked to you about earlier, building your compelling case in a job interview is, to put it mildly, difficult. And so this is something people say, well, I don't do this very often. That's part of the problem. This is the most unique form of communication in business. There's nothing like it. And if you don't get into the rhythm, if you don't understand how it works, if you don't really perfect the preparation, you're going to struggle. And there's no indication that we're going to go back to the large-scale management and executive hiring that we did prior to the pandemic. Why? Because during the pandemic, we learned a lot of things about ourselves and about our country and about our politics and a lot of other things. But what management learned was we don't need all those people as executives and managers to be successful. Okay, so let's move to day 1. First of all, compile your own job summary document. Take the job summary that they have online, information from the job summary, and answers to your questions. Now, be very focused here. Don't just look at their job summary, create your own. Write down what they're looking for. Write down keywords that they're using. And think about your strengths and your stories. Now, the second thing you want to do is identify relevant position categories. For example, every job has financial responsibilities. Every job has human resources responsibilities. Every job has operational responsibilities. Some jobs have sales and revenue. It may be internal sales. It may be external sales. Every job has some governance. Governance may mean reporting to a board, but it also may mean reporting to your boss. Okay? So all of those things are there. And your financial responsibility, operational responsibility, human resource these are all standard elements of any job. So break those out based on what the job summary is telling you. Okay? Then add these categories to the core and categorical worksheet. Again, be consistent. Don't write down what you want it to say. Write down what you actually believe the core and categorical statement, the categories are. And in each category, be consistent, be honest with yourself, be accountable to yourself, list your strengths, your successes, and examples of those successes. And the form that you download allows you a place to fill in all of those. Now, somebody says, well, I've done that for, in general. No, every job has a little bit different twist to it. So you need to do this for every job you're applying for, because that will help you become more prepared and more focused on the process and you'll start thinking more like you need to think in a job interview. Then also on that form, include questions that you would ask if you were conducting the interview. Now, that's really important. You know why? Because if you're an executive or a manager, you got some experience and you kind of know what the job's about. So if you were going to hire you, what questions would you ask? That'll give you a good idea of what questions some people may ask. And the tell is what's either said plainly or between the lines in the job summary. Look for those tells as well. Then you need to identify your weaknesses. Now, I once had an executive get really angry and push back and said, I don't like talking about my weaknesses. And I said, why? We all have them. Well, I just don't think that's productive, and I don't think don't want the people to know that. Be accountable. You got it. Be accountable. If you can't talk about that, you're not going to get picked. Why? Because they're going to say this guy or this woman has a zero level of emotional intelligence. We all have weaknesses. You have to understand the weaknesses. You can use those and make them pivot around and make them positives and tell funny stories about yourself. I've seen some really great answers to these questions, answers that actually help the candidate and the board bond. I was doing I've used this story in the past. I was doing an interview for a position up in Northeast Oregon, and everybody was the board. I finished all the interviews. I packaged everything up, and I used video to show the board members what the candidates looked like when they were answering questions about issues related to their organization. So it gave them a sense of which of these 6 or 7 people do we want to bring in for an interview. And this one guy, I said, "What are your weaknesses?" And he laughed and looked forward at the camera and said, "Maybe we better call my wife." And all the people who were kind of sitting back like this with their arms folded laughed and then leaned in. Why? Because they decided they liked him. What's one of the key things about getting hired? Likability. Now, write a focus 8.8, write a focus narrative on an engaging explanation of how you succeeded in your jobs. The goal, you want to be likable and build trust. At the end of the interview, you can use a lot of this information, a lot of the information from the core and categorical form to use your closing statement. Somebody said last week on the questions stream on Friday morning, what's closing the deal mean? Well, closing the deal means if you don't ask for the sale, you're not going to get it. That's it in a nutshell. And when you get down to it, I saw a candidate who was absolutely struggling. He was a good guy. He was well credentialed. He was operationally proficient. He had been in an organization for a long time. His boss retired. He had some family issues, illness in the family. He was not ready to take on the CEO job. The board understood that, but the new CEO didn't want him there. He wanted to bring his own team, and so this guy was out of work. And he was really struggling because it had been 5 to 8 years since he had been in a job interview. And I kept trying to get him to really, at the end of his interview, either with the board or the decision maker or whatever, to sum up why he was the best person for the job. And he struggled with that because he just wasn't comfortable selling. And I just was pounding and pounding him. I think he was ready to shoot me. And he was ready to call our engagement to a close. And he was going to a hospital down in Colorado. And he got there. He and his wife drove from Minnesota down, and they really liked the community. Really loved the community. It was charming. The people were friendly. They had an active church that aligned with their spiritual beliefs. There were a lot of recreational things for their kids. Everybody, when he was introduced on the street corner, people stopped to talk and ask where they were from and about their kids. And that night, before he went to the board meeting to be interviewed, his wife said, this is the place we've always talked about being. This is the kind of place that we wanted to come to. So please do a good job. And he got there and he answered questions. He didn't sell himself very well. And toward the end, they said, "Well, we appreciate you coming and we'll get back to you." And he said something snapped, because I'd heard that so many other times when I wasn't picked. And he said, I don't know where this came from, but I leaned forward and I said, "I want you to know before I leave that I'm really interested in this job. I am enamored with your community. My wife and I just can't believe what a charming community it is. Your churches, your community organizations, your schools, they fit so well with what we want in our life. But more importantly, some of the challenges you face here in this hospital are perfectly aligned with my experiences. I have solved most of these problems very successfully with long-term sustainability for the organization. I'm certified in practice management, so I know how to deal with physicians. I am certified in hospital administration, so I really understand operations. I have really good political skills, and my board members will speak of my ability to build strong ties in the community. I guarantee you I can be successful in this job that I want this job and that I will be a productive, effective partner with this board to help you take this hospital to the future. Thank you. And he got up and everybody said, we really appreciate your summing that up and thank you very much. He went back to the hotel and his wife said, how did it go? And he said, maybe a lot like all of them. The next day, as they were driving back, they stopped at a truck stop in northeast Colorado. And it was getting cold. And his wife went in to get some coffee and fill up their thermoses and get some snacks and powder the noses. And he was filling up with gas, and his cell phone rang. And it was the chairman of the board. And he said, we were really thinking that we would take several days to kind of think about all the people who had applied. But after you finished last night, we sat around there and talked for a while, and we just met this morning again, and we voted to make you our CEO, and we hope that you'll accept our offer. The guy said, I just started to cry. And that's what happens when you can tell your story and you can close the deal. When you create a narrative that connects with people. Because let me tell you, you know what? They like trust, they like likability. But you know what triggers those things? Emotion. And he did his presentation in a way that triggered emotion. Okay, on day 2, read your consolidated job summary again and confirm all of those issues that you've written down. And you may look at it and go, God, that's not right. I'm missing that. That's why it's so good to pace this out over several days. Read the entries from each category that you put down on the form. Edit to your responses, your stories, when you talk about weakness, be sure that the responses you're going to use are in your voice. We can write stuff down and memorize it, but sometimes that's not in our voice, and that doesn't make you authentic. Number 3, revise, reread, and streamline examples for impact. In other words, don't just say, well, I did this. Think about what's the value piece of reducing days in AR, or the value of reducing the turnover rate, or the value for improving physician satisfaction, employee satisfaction. There's value to each one of those things. So reread that. Be sure that that message is coming through and that you can provide specific examples. That's what you have to do. So here you have to be focused. 4, you want to reread in front of your spouse, your partner, or your coach. Do your examples and explanations that you're using, do they sound authentic? Are they in your voice? Are they believable? And then tweak it again. That's really great. No, keep looking at it. Look for opportunities. Sometimes you need to leave well enough alone, but usually it's 2 or 3 times rereading and editing can be very beneficial. So be intentional here. Revise, reread on your own, and be intentional. Now, day 3. The hardest part, I think, is writing and rewriting. Forcing yourself to believe you can improve the impact of your message. One person said, writing is hard, but the real hard part of writing is rewriting, and it's never done until it's rewritten several times. So take this day to read through your stuff, to read it out loud, to practice in front of a mirror, reflect and improve. Be accountable to yourself that you want this job, that you want to be. You may turn this job down, but you want it to be your choice, your decision. Now, day 4. Now, this is the first day of rehearsing, okay? I said rehearse in front of a mirror before. This is when rehearsal becomes your style and your delivery, how you're going to use your hands. Successful interviews include an element of performative art. Now, that's like speakers. They get out on the stage and they've done this same presentation 10 or 15 times, but they always practice it, the good ones, 30 minutes to an hour, or more before they redo the presentation. Rehearse, rehearse, and rehearse some more, okay? Begin at your desk, reading and rereading, and focus on learning your examples. Be sure that you're ready to use those examples that talk about how you've delivered value. Now, take some breaks, but commit to the whole day. Be accountable. You may go off and get a coffee at Starbucks or your favorite local, community coffee store. You may run some errands, but practice your value statement, practice your pacing, practice how you're going to deliver the information. It's real easy to get distracted. Okay, I got this. No, be accountable. You have to be better than everyone else that's in the interview process. You don't get picked because you're as good as someone else. You get picked because there is an advantage in the minds of the employer or the board. Day 5. Now this is serious practice now, okay? And one of the things that I encourage you to do is buy a little inexpensive tripod for your cell phone. Set it on your desk and practice, turn it around, set it up so that you can see yourself, and then practice answering questions. And kind of then go back and look at how you do. Okay? Don't be self-conscious. This is what people who entertain, this is what actors do, this is what successful speakers do, it's what athletes do, it's what musicians do. They practice. Why do they practice? Because when they're on stage, on the field, in front of the board, in front of an audience of 1,000, they want to be the best they can be. Okay? Now, don't be self-conscious, but be focused. And then as you go through this, if something doesn't feel right or sound right, amend the script, okay? Think about, okay, I don't want to say that. I want to say it this way. Now, work on your pace and tone to prompt emotion. That's the decision trigger. And you really, really need to do that. It's really, really important that you're able to reach out and touch people, particularly a board when board's hiring. Now, this may be a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100, or this may be a big regional manufacturing company. But you know what? People that are there have kids, they have families, they have lives on their own, and they want to do what's best for their company. And if you are the person that can reassure them that not only do you have the experience, but that you have the results. A lot of people have experience in doing a job, but the results aren't very good. So you have to talk about your experience, and then you have to talk about the results, and you have to use examples, because that makes the examples, the stories make the results memorable. And the way you deliver that are ways that you can trigger the emotions. And not everybody at the table may be triggered in the same way. So, you have to be mindful of potential trigger points. And when you get to the end of your interview, that's when it's best. They say that one of the most successful evangelists in modern history was Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was a Southern Baptist by faith, but he was basically went around the country and did these big evangelistic crusades. And they rented these huge amphitheaters and auditoriums. And, the people would be piled high into the ceiling. I don't know if you ever did the old Houston Astrodome, but it could take you 20 minutes to get down from the top down to the field. And so toward the end of his sermon, he would begin to slow down. And he would begin to sort of sum up why he felt like you should make the decision to come to the altar. The Protestant church calls it an altar call, and basically commit your life to your faith. And to do that, he would use emotional triggers, and it always was very, very successful. The choir would start singing in the background, and people would get up all over emotional trigger and walk down, and it may take them 20 minutes. And he's assuring everybody, don't worry, the people you came with, they'll stay for you. If you feel this, come down. And people did, because he was very effective at using triggers for emotion and likability. Now, I'm not telling you to do an evangelistic altar call close. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that when you're trying to connect with people, you can't just go in there and say, I want to connect with you. You got to touch them emotionally. And you have to do it in a way that's likable and trustworthy. So you want to be sure that your script is authentic and that you have the decisions to trigger. Now, day 6. This is for fine-tuning and perfecting. You got some tough answers from previous interviews, so be accountable. Go through and look at those previous questions. And if you're not keeping a journal of your search and of your career, well, shame on you. Shame on you. You should start, every time you do an interview, you should keep list of all the questions you're asked, the ones that gave you the trouble. And those are the ones you want to practice on. And sometimes a question that you got in a screening interview early in the process, You may be on your second site visit if you're really a senior executive and they're really doing the deep dive. But that question that may have kind of befuzzled you early in the process, it comes up again, and now you have a chance to nail it. So as you go through your day, take breaks from the practice, but be intentional. Try to sit there and perfect your answers, perfect the timing, perfect the language that you use. Practice builds confidence. A lot of people go into interviews because they're nervous. Why are they nervous? Because they haven't prepared. Confidence promotes self-awareness. And you know what self-awareness does? Self-awareness allows you to take in the room, to be room sensitive, to see how people are reacting to what you say, where you can smile at someone. If you're so nervous and you're just constantly trying to process oh my God, what's the next question? You're going to miss all those opportunities. Now, let me tell you something. No, you can't predict which questions will be asked, but there's only a limited number of questions that can be asked about a certain job. And if you go look at all the interview books, and there have been more than a few written, you're going to see the same questions over and over. Somebody once said there's about 75 to 80 legitimate interview questions that can be asked. I don't think there are that many. Okay. But if it's a real in-depth interview, that's a couple of hours, they're may ask about some behavior and values questions. Well, there's a whole book on behavior and values questions that you can look through. The best one is called Top Grading by Brad Smart, and it has a bunch of behavior values questions in the back of the book. A take-home exam. Okay. Practice builds confidence. So that's why you take these days. This is not to get ready from scratch. This 7 days is designed to help you perfect your interview so that you are more effective and you deliver your best performance. Day 7. This is your walkthrough day. Just like NFL teams, they'll fly into a city and they'll go to the practice field and they'll do a walkthrough, or they may do the walkthrough before they leave their home city. And they walk through the plays they're going to run, and they talk about situations, and everybody talks about the timing and all the plays that they're going to use. Any trick plays, they've kind of walked through those again to be sure they've got the timing down right. Now, this again, read through your core and categorical form and be intentional about this. Okay, take that form with you. If you're flying or if you're taking the train or whatever, take that form with you so you can keep looking it over. Don't sit there and play games or watch some movie. Keep being prepared. Now, I don't want you to get over prepared, but reading through that form once or twice on the plane going is not going to get you over prepared. Remind yourself that the hard work will pay off. So you need to be confident. You need to be intentional about reviewing that core and categorical form. And you want to say, oh, I got this. I don't need to do day 7. No corner cutting. Okay. That's where people make mistakes. I think that if you do this work, if you go through the process, if you've built your preparation before you start the interview process with your resume, your value brand statement, understanding the process of creating your brand, and you do this, you're going to be ready. If you do this work, you can beat back your anxiety and nervousness. Now, one thing I use this quote a lot because it's amazing. I would tell people at the end of the interview as I was closing down, and I would spend 2 to 3 hours because I did executive recruiting. I would look at the candidate and say, now, one thing I want you to remember, the employer is not inviting you to embarrass you or reject you. They have a need. They're looking for a solution. They are looking for a reason to hire you. So give them one. And people sometimes would look at you and go, really? Is that what this is all about? It's like I opened a door. And I will tell you, just give them a reason. This is not an adversarial situation. If you get nervous, it's because you're not prepared. If you're prepared, if you've got self-awareness, if you're confident, I guarantee you can make this an enjoyable, beneficial experience. Now, we have some upcoming events for the rest of the week I want to bring your attention to. Tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, we have office hours. The topic is in preparation right now, and so we don't have anything to announce. Thursday morning, we have a weekly Career Live where we talk about developments in the career industry and some maybe one or two tactical things you can do in your job search. And then Friday morning at 11 a.m., we have your career questions, and it's live, and people, a lot of times people will just send in their questions in advance. You want to do that, it's info@johngself.com, info@johngself.com, or you can put them in the chat box. And when we do this, we do not use people's first and last names, and we don't even use it. If they live in a small town, we don't even use the name of the town. We'll just use their state. So you can ask a question anonymously. So again, this 7 steps is really your own final approach for the interview, and that's the 7 days prior to that interview. These are steps you want to take. Excuse me. There's a lot more to be prepared to be competitive in a job search, and that work has to start before you go to market. So, don't try to say, oh, well, that's 7 days. That's all it takes to get a job. No, it doesn't. This is one of the toughest times. I've been in search a long time, and I pulled out and stopped doing search because I got tired of getting on airplanes. But and if you've flown domestically in the United States, you know why. But I also traveled internationally, so it was time to quit traveling. I now work from a studio just in a city about an hour and 15, 20 minutes from Dallas, and so I'm close enough to Dallas to enjoy that amenities, and this town is easy enough for an old guy to get around in. So what I want to encourage you to do is take a look at some of our videos and some of our courses. If you become a member of Your Career Community, you get access to all of our content and the 11 courses or 10 courses we have, plus access to the career boot camp that we sponsored on April 27th that ran 3 hours or more, actually. And we talked about all these basics, all these issues and how to get prepared. So if you're going into a career transition and you're trying to figure out, do I need help or not? No, I don't want to spend $5,000 or $6,000 for a coach. You can use our Your Career Community approach. You get on-demand learning. You can get discounted live coaching. We're here to help. So I hope that this has been helpful information for you today. We hope that you'll come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock and join us for office hours.